I'm sure you can all remember the days when cool was the cool word. A thing was cool. It's really kind of unusual that the word cool has persisted through multiple generations. And then a thing wasn't cool, a thing rocked. And then things ruled. And that occurred to me for some reason just today when I thought parents rule. Parents rule the world. You guys are determining pretty much the fate of mankind as you raise your kids. It's that big a thing. But in addition to being potentially incredibly effective, you can find parenting fun. If this is your first time to watch this, to watch one of these Facebook Loving Parents Live, Loving Parents Live group, you should get that. That's the goal of this. It's not only to learn how to do something, but to learn how to do something and have fun doing it. Because if my goal was just to teach you how to make your child quiet, duct tape. I mean, we can do that. Shrink wrap, even better. And then whether you make a little slit for their mouth is, up to you. No, it's not to control children's behavior. It's to raise children who feel loved, who are loving, who are responsible, and the whole time you're having fun doing it. If you get that from what we talk about today and from looking over under, what is it? Items,
units.
You can see all the past ones. If you get that, then I'm doing my job. If you don't get that parenting can be fun and effective, then bring your confusion and your questions and your buts and your objections and post them on Loving Parents Live. And share this with people. This is something that you will learn better with other people. No kidding. So share it with other people, talk about it, discuss it, submit your questions, have watch parties. Let's have a good time at this. The first person who writes says, I work in the health field. And boy, right about now, I'm just really glad I've retired from the health field. So she says, with the social isolation, I'm struggling with doing both my job and homeschooling. Yeah, like either one wouldn't be hard enough. So you're doing both. I've tried to put together a plan, but I'm failing. Well, good for you, actually, that you recognize that. Most people go, in fact, it's almost a socially expected answer. How are you doing at home with all this? We're doing okay, meaning nobody's dead. Not a high bar for happiness, No, I'm having a hard time. I love it that you're willing to be vulnerable and say that. You say, Peter, my 8-year-old son, is also feeling bad about himself for not excelling at home like he does at school. That's very clever of you to observe. Remembering that only love is real, this is mom still talking, I just feel like I'm failing. Bless you for saying this, because lots of parents are having problems similar to this, if not exactly that. This is a perfect illustration, your particular iteration of this problem, perfect illustration of the dangers of praise. At school, they have numbers and grade letters and test scores, standardized test scores even, and comparisons. Kids go, real casual, like, so, what'd you get on the test? And see, the kid who asks first is the clever one, because no matter what the other kid says, he can make something up that's higher. Always want to be the person that asks first. And because your son is smart, he has learned to get those numbers, those scores, those letters to feel good about himself. But he only uses them in that way because he doesn't feel unconditionally loved enough. He uses praise as a substitute for feeling loved and really genuinely mattering, mostly to you. So what's my first recommendation? Surprise. Go to realloveparents.com. Take the ridiculously effective parenting training. I mean it. Just do it. Don't go, well, I'm not sure if it'll make. Just do it. The price of the training is about the price of a mid-level auto repair. I mean, it's less than replacing your transmission. It's not a major repair. It's not like a wreck. It's like a mid-level auto repair. Is your child worth that? Learn how to unconditionally love your child. The function of parents in every case, no matter what happens, comes down to loving and teaching. That's just not complicated. That's two things. The problem is almost no parents know how to unconditionally love their child. And so they just do the teaching alone without the loving, which ends up coming across as lecturing, controlling, criticizing. The kid gets angry, you react with anger, and we've swirled into the toilet together before we realize it. We have to be taught how to unconditionally love our kids. Take the ridiculously effective parenting training. In the meantime, however,
and get the resources, your personal attention.
And you get my attention 3 times a week when you take the training. It's not like you go through 45 hours of training and you go, I've got it. Or go through 45 hours of training and then realize, shoot, I'm still screwed because things come up that aren't in the training. I couldn't possibly put every circumstance in the training. It would have been 1,500 hours of training. So I only did 45. Sounds like a lot. That's a start, because every week I give you a written answer. Somebody's submitted a question and I give a written answer. Then on another day, I do a video answer, just like I'm doing now, actually. And then we do a conference call that I host. So I don't just have a conference call where a bunch of people get together like on a bulletin board and, just shoot the breeze with each other and say, well, here's what I think. I'll be right there supporting you pretty much for the rest of your life. So worth it easily. In the meantime, that's the long answer. Take the training, get the support. Start off by telling him that you've made a mistake. So I'm going to be you. I've made a mistake with you. My fault entirely. By making a big deal out of your grades, by making you feel like good grades make you a more worthwhile person. Because when you come home and you have all A's, I get all lit up and I say, oh, wow, I'm so proud of you and blah, blah, blah. And I don't do that when your room's not clean. So what have you learned to do? You've learned to feel worthwhile by getting good grades. And now here you are stuck at home and we don't have the same standardized testing. We don't have the same, you're in the 98th percentile stuff that you have at school so that you can compare yourself to other people and go, look at me, I'm worthwhile. You say, I was wrong. Grades are only information about where you are and what you need to learn. The real point of learning is, counterintuitively, learning. Learning is its own reward. It's fun. Additionally, it prepares us for the next thing to learn so we can have more fun. And then all the while having fun, just like we're doing right now in the parenting training and in this particular Loving Parents Live Facebook page group. While we're having fun learning, we're able to learn much better and we become better parents. And in school, it's the same thing. You're having fun, you're learning, and then you latch on to something that you go, I could do that for the rest of my life and make a living doing it. Different subject. So what's your job as his mother? I'm sure he probably has like homework assignments to do. The kids who've been sent home from school to go to home, to learn at home, are still given assignments and they complete them, over the internet and so on. Give him additional interesting assignments. Get involved in his schooling. Find out. I used to do this with my kids. They would say, we're learning about the history of Europe and blah, blah, blah. And some kid would say, and we learned about Yugoslavia. And I said, so Yugoslavia has now broken up into 7 countries. It is right now 7 countries. Actually, I went to five and then six, and then that's quite a history. I said, so your job is to find out. This is before the internet, so it was much harder. Well, it wasn't before the internet, but it was before the easy access to Googling everything. And it was shortly after, the invention of electricity. And so I would say to that kid, so your job in 2 weeks is to come back to the family meeting in 2 weeks and teach us how Yugoslavia broke up into 7 countries. That's a real challenge. That involves sociology and history and psychology and politics and government and cool. School assignments tend to be more limited, and school assignments tend to be focused on kids improving on their standardized testing. In other words, in school, kids are taught how to succeed like your son is succeeding so that they can get a grade so they can feel worthwhile. And your kid has fallen right into the trap along with you. So what are you going to do? You're going to give him assignments above and beyond his assignments from school. And initially, he will protest. He'll say, but my school assignment is only this big. And you say, isn't this going to be cool? Now you get to learn this much. You get to learn this much. And you have to say that with an absolutely straight face, or preferably a smile on your face. And you got to mean it. So be involved in his teaching. And then when he completes this assignment, you don't do like they do at school. You don't do a multiple choice test. I was watching an assessment of school systems all over the world, and I learned that in Finland, for example, which has the highest rated school system in the world, Finland, little Finland, right there between Sweden and Russia. I learned that in school, by the way. And I didn't learn it for a grade. I learned it because I found it interesting, so that I don't say things like, wonder how much they enjoy going to the beach in Bulgaria, which doesn't have a coastline. So here's little Finland, and they got the highest rated school system in the world. They don't do multiple choice tests. In fact, they don't give grades until grade 8. No grades at all. What are they there for? The kids are there to learn and to have fun. The teachers will say, we're here to learn and have fun. And collaborate, get along with each other, learn stuff together. And that's what you can do with your son. So you specifically asked, I'm failing at home and he's not feeling worthwhile. When he can get away from the idea that grades matter at all at home, and in the long run, they don't matter. I got straight A's in everything and the highest score in everything in high school and college and medical school. And I got to the point in my life where I had a gun to my head. So clearly grades don't do it. Neither does success, neither does money, neither does entertainment. So he teaches you what he learns. And you are fascinated to learn this new subject. Don't assign him something you already know. Assign him something you don't know so that you become the student. You think kids don't have fun teaching their parents, who are relatively stupid on that subject? Well, I really kind of dig that. And then, so first you ask him, what did you learn when you give him the assignment? And then how does it feel now that you know more? And help him come up with the words. Interesting. I feel kind of like more powerful because I know more. There's an innate power that's developed from knowledge, not the kind of power over other people, comparison. You just feel stronger because you're able to make better choices. For example, when I give students tests, because I taught in medical school for years, I never gave a multiple choice test. I didn't realize I was doing it Finland's way, but now we've learned that that's a better way to learn, and it's been proven by the #1 school system in the world. I go, cool. I feel wiser. I feel stronger. He might say that it's exciting to learn this new stuff, that he's eager to know more. And in fact, until he can come up with those words like it, interesting, powerful, exciting, stimulating, eager. Until he can, you need to keep practicing with him because he's still missing the point of learning itself. So this business of staying at home is really a great opportunity. Now, for you teaching this, there is a blog that you can read. You can go to reallove.com where there are hundreds of blogs. And this one is from December 29, 2017. And I explained that most of us, once we have learned something, it's called the, I can't remember the title of the article. You'll find it. Once we've learned a thing, we lose our ability to remember what it's like not to know it. Studies have demonstrated that because we know a thing, we then tend to believe we've always known that thing. And that leads us to a belief that other people know it, or at the very least, they should know it. Now, why am I telling you that when it comes to your son? Because of that little problem of it's called the trap of knowledge, or
Curse of knowledge?
The curse of knowledge, says my brilliant wife who's read the blog and remembered it and I didn't. As a result of this curse that we think everybody should know what we know, or that they just know it, we have little empathy for the people who don't know it. And in that condition, we tend to become impatient and ineffective teachers of that thing that we know. Now, who would this apply to? Or what would it apply to? A parent, for example, tells me, oh, my child is just so irresponsible. Now, if most parents say that to other parents, the other parents are going to go, I know, right? I mean, they're just not responsible for anything. The two of them complain to each other because, see, they learn to be responsible, some of them, the parents, over, their 40 years of life, and they figure that their 8-year-old should be as responsible as they are. And so what I say when a parent tells me that their child is irresponsible, I say, well, who taught them responsibility? Of course, the answer is embarrassing. The parent who's complaining is the one whose job it has been to teach that child to be responsible. And it turns out all the parent has done is expect the child to be responsible, which is far different from teaching it. Teaching responsibility is a stepwise thing where you teach a child what responsibility means. No, we just expect them to have their room clean. We just expect them to do what we tell them to do. I can remember with at least a couple of my kids, I made the regrettable mistake, regrettable for me and ask them, regrettable for them too, of teaching them piano. And so in the early stages of playing the piano, I would say, play this piece, an incredibly easy piece. I mean, day one pieces. And then I would become impatient with them as I taught them the piece because, well, I felt like I was born knowing how to play that piece. No, I wasn't. I had to be taught it. I had to learn it. I had to practice it. And so did they. Now, why am I telling you this? Because you will have a tendency with homeschooling to become impatient with him. One example is what you just talked about that you're failing at. You said, I'm failing at giving him a sense that he's doing well or excelling in school. And that's because you haven't taught him how to feel good about himself for just simply being thoroughly immersed in it. You haven't taught him that. Your fault. And you have to tell him that. We already talked about how you're going to tell him that. So you'll have a tendency to become impatient with him, like, well, we're doing it at school, just enjoy it. Well, who taught him to do that? The school's been bribing him with grades and praise and all this stuff. And now that you can't bribe him in exactly the same way, you don't know how to motivate him. So you get to learn how by listening to what I'm saying now, by taking the parenting training, becoming a student yourself, and then passing on to him how school can become exciting for its own sake. learning, any subject. A third grade teacher wrote me about the blog that I just described and about this thing, the curse of knowledge, and really indirectly about you teaching your son. She said, this blog from the reallove.com website really got me thinking and feeling for the students in my classroom. I realized that I need much more to stop, remember my own 8-year-old self, imagine how sensitive, vulnerable, and dependent I felt at that age, and teach from my heart, not from a book, with empathy. And the two subjects that I teach, math and English, which, by themselves, math doesn't have a built-in sense of empathy to it. English maybe a little bit more. That these need to be planned with careful understanding of how the concepts are often very brand new to my students. You have an opportunity to teach your son the fun of learning as opposed to the extrinsic rewards of learning in a way that you may never have been taught. So you're learning this now. You're going to have an opportunity to teach it to him, and you're going to teach it to him compassionately, calmly, lovingly. You're both going to grow unimaginably from this experience. I'm glad you're having it. Have fun. Next question. This is from somebody who says, why are kids naturally fearless? Where does it come from? And why does it go away when they become adults? Most children from an early age are relatively fearless, but not all kids. It has been proven, categorically proven, that the greatest influence in a human being's life happens when they're the youngest. And now studies have proven that we can have significant effects on the personality and other traits of a child while they're developing in the womb. Proven, not a guess. And if they're immersed in an atmosphere of fear, tension, contention, fighting, and so on, before they're even born, even those kids are not born fearless. All right, but what about those that are? Because your question was, why are children relatively fearless? So we'll deal with those. First, I had to deal with the exception. Because they haven't been sufficiently poisoned yet with fear and control and anger. I was describing how to teach responsibility and how to teach not whining to a parent of an 18-month-old little girl. And I said, the first thing you have to remember is you have to not be angry. You have to be loving. And then described how each time she whines or complains, instead of using words, that he would say, well, I guess you don't want to be out here with all of the happy people, all the people who are having a good time. If you want to cry and whine, you can, but you have to do that by yourself in your room. So he would pick her up and he would take her to her room. And he said, within the first or second time that he did it, this is an 18-month-old kid, because he was being kind and loving, not threatening, not like I've seen countless parents do. When a child is misbehaving, you better, don't you make me come over there. And then the parent comes over there and grabs him by the hair or the scruff of the neck and jerks him into their room. Well, now we've got a terrified child who's misbehaving. No, he just told her this as calmly as could be. And because she was young enough, because she hadn't already been sufficiently poisoned with fear and control and anger, she would just immediately stop whining. And then she would sit in the room and just wait for him to open the door, which would be usually 10 or 20 seconds. And he'd open the door and she'd go, hi. And the last time he did it, she said, wee-ha. She celebrated that he was back after 10 seconds of her being in a room, and that then she didn't whine and cry after she came out of the room. Children haven't been poisoned yet. Their little souls haven't been stomped flat by our anger and fear and control. early on, they haven't been told enough times, don't, stop it, get down from there, don't run, quit making noise. And because they haven't been told all of that don't stuff, which is what little kids hear all day, don't, stop, be careful. When they're young enough and they haven't been told what not to be, what's left? They get to be themselves. Whoa, no kidding. Here are these adults traveling the world and going to South America and taking ayahuasca, the death vine, and going to Nepal and meditating in Buddhist temples to find themselves. When it turns out that we'd already found ourselves when we were, one. It's not about finding ourselves. It's about eliminating all the things that distract us from being ourselves. So we eliminate the fear. That's why we love and teach our children. That eliminates fear. Loving does, and so does teaching. So they get to be themselves, little kids do. They get to be creative and exploratory, which is why they're always rummaging through cupboards and making messes of things. It's just part of expressing their little creativities. They're inquisitive, they're eager, they're energetic, they're born like that. But after enough correction and control and anger and emotional violence can be as simple as this. And we think, oh, no, disappointment isn't emotional violence. Really? So sometime during a conversation where somebody is telling you something that's really important to them, that really matters, they tell you ahead of time that it really matters, and they're all energetic. While they're in the middle of relating to you their life experience, just go and take a look at their reaction and see if that didn't constitute emotional violence on your part. Yeah, it really does. Our potential goal as parents is to love and teach our children as early as possible so that they don't lose their fearlessness. And if we screwed that up, which most of us did, then 2, love and teach them later in life so that we can provide them an opportunity where fear no longer makes any sense. We provide them an atmosphere where it doesn't make sense to feel afraid anymore, where they feel safe to explore and create. Again, to be themselves. Again, not to find themselves, but just to go about doing it again. This is from the mother of a teenage daughter. And mom says, my daughter, as we're practicing the principles of real love in our family, mostly I'm teaching them because their father says he's just really not interested in that touchy-feely, stupid stuff, which, of course, is his choice. But mom said, well, I'm going to continue to teach the kids this. And as a result of teaching the kids what loving and teaching looks like, what it looks like to and feels like to feel loved and to be loving and to be responsible, as a result, this teenage daughter is starting to notice the behaviors of other people in ways she never noticed before. So mom continues to write to me. She says that her daughter said, Dad doesn't really listen to me when I talk to him. Whoa. See, for most of us, when we were kids, nobody ever really listened to us. They were always telling us what to do. They weren't listening. Well, if that's all that we've ever known, it doesn't seem all that remarkable. And so we just call that normal. Well, now the daughter is learning a new reality, how things can be, that her mother is actually listening to her. And as a result, she's seeing the contrast. Mom's never once said, oh, well, your father never listens to you. No, that would be a terrible way to teach. But the daughter's noticing that her father doesn't really listen to her. He is always multitasking and doing something else, and she'll bring up a subject of something from school, and he'll hear a familiar word. Adults do this with each other all the time. He'll hear a single word in the story that she's telling related to something that he's thought about, and zoop, off he goes telling a story of his own, not having listened to anything she said except for that one isolated word. So she said, Dad doesn't really listen to me. He talks on top of me. He hears something in the content and gets triggered and zips off and talks about something else. And it has nothing to do with responding to me. He doesn't hear me. He doesn't understand me. Mom says, my daughter is perceptive and beginning to notice this. She didn't notice before because it's all she ever knew. And now that I'm listening to her, she's beginning to see his behavior. Well, good for her. Now, see, there would be a tendency on the part of many people who are talking about parenting to say, oh no, defend the father. Say, oh, he doesn't mean to do that, dear. I'm sure he's listening better than you think he's listening. No, the child's actually learning something new. Be glad that she is. She's learning that there's a different way to live than the way her father lives, and that the way her father lives is really pretty self-centered, pretty selfish, doesn't really include her. And she needs to also begin to realize that she does the same kind of not listening often with her siblings. The same kind of non-listening her father does with her, she does with her siblings, because father and mother taught her to do that. Nobody's ever taught her to really listen. You have an opportunity to teach her how to do that now, so that she can avoid the non-listening that makes intimate and fulfilling relationships impossible. Mom said, I told her that, yes, he does do that, not just to her, but to everyone. Bless your heart. See, so notice, everybody who's listening, Mom didn't contradict the girl. She didn't defend the dad. Defending it's a stupid approach to almost anything. Something's either true or it's not. Defending it doesn't make any sense. So Mom just said, you're right. He doesn't listen. He doesn't listen to you. He doesn't listen to pretty much anybody. Mom continues. He doesn't listen not because he doesn't want to, but because he doesn't know how to. So he really can't. If you pointed out to him, Dad, you don't really listen to me, he wouldn't even know what you're talking about. He would say, well, I'm right here in the room. I didn't leave the room, so I'm listening. Or I'm not speaking, so I'm listening, neither of which is true at all. Real listening is a very active affair, which we talk about extensively in the parenting training. Mom says, I said to her that she can stop him and say, when he interrupts her and goes off on these tangents, quote, Dad, I was not done talking, end quote. That's a very gentle way of stopping somebody from interrupting you. A good thing for us adults to do with each other. Donna, my partner, does it with me. Sometimes she'll be talking about something. She'll pause for, an hour or two, so I think she's done with the subject. No, she'll pause and take a breath and maybe look, and I'll think she's done. So then I'll talk about something else, and she'll say, well, I wasn't done talking. What am I going to do? Argue and say, well, you paused for 3.2 seconds and the limit is 2.8 seconds. That means you're done. So I get to come in with a no. If she wasn't done talking, then she wasn't done talking. And if she's not done talking, what's my job? To listen. Same with our kids. We need to actually train our kids to do with us what this mother is telling her daughter she can do with her father. I wasn't done talking. We need to listen better. And if we have them helping us see when we're not listening, we get much better at listening, because they like to be little policemen and point out when we're doing things that are not particularly helpful. The daughter, however, replies to the mom. She says she doesn't really care if he doesn't listen to her. She said, I'm not so sure if it matters to me anymore what he thinks about me. End quote. Ooh, that's a little scary. And a good motivation for all of us as parents. If we consistently fail to listen to our children, and our children somehow get the idea, who knows where they'd get it from, somebody else probably, that they're actually worthwhile. They're actually worthwhile, but we don't pay attention to them. They only got two ways to go. They can get rid of the idea that they're worthwhile and go, well, I must be worthless because my parents don't listen to me. Or they can say, I am worthwhile and my parents must be kind of stupid that they don't know how to listen to me. There's only two ways to do this. So it's our job as parents to listen so that our children will feel worthwhile and so that what we say to our children will matter to them because they can see that we pay attention to them. Mom asks me, so now that my daughter is seeing that my husband's pretty self-centered, what do I do about it? Do I defend him? What do I do? No, you don't defend. You just be honest with her like you just did. You just got through saying to her, you're right, Dad doesn't listen very well. That's it. But then you went a little further and you said, it's not that he doesn't want to listen to you. Nobody's ever listened to him, including me, meaning Mom. And so he's never felt listened to. He's never seen an example of listening. Nobody's ever taught him how to listen. And that's why he doesn't listen to you. Just doesn't know how. And if the opportunity arises, you can share with him a little bit about what you know about parenting, but he's already made it pretty clear that he's not interested in that touchy-feely stuff. If, however, he observes you connecting with the kids in a deeper way than he does, and he may never notice that, but if he does, he might say to you, why did the kids gravitate to you and not to me? That would be an opportunity for you to tell him, they don't feel like you listen to them. At which point he will say, I do listen to them. And then you get to tell him some of the things that we talked about in this discussion. That listening doesn't mean just being quiet. It doesn't just mean staying in the same room. It means being actively involved in looking at somebody, touching them, asking them questions about what they're talking about, all the things that we talk about in the parenting training. So this has been great fun for me. We will do it again tomorrow, and I've been thrilled to have you here.